This script was written at a time of the last batch of uploads and then touched up at a later date. Don't think about it as a current events of what's happening recently in my own world, more of a pseudo time capsule. That being said, let's get into this. I finally did it. I added all of the itch.io racial justice bundle items to my account. 58 pages at 30 items a page, plus one item on the very last 59th page. So many items that needed to be added one at a time. On my keyboard, I have 5 extra buttons on the left side. These are all designed for mapping keys to functions and macro combinations and whatnot. In an effort to keep my back and wrists okay, I mapped the page up and down buttons to the extra keys, so that way I don't have to stretch my left arm all the way over to the right side of the board. And I could keep my right hand on the mouse and quickly move through the pages, just over and over for 59 pages. After I had everything added, I found this other page that actually lists all the items. Luckily, you can sort them by their type. That's what itch uses for categories. You can sort them all by game, physical game, game assets, soundtracks, tools, comics, books, and finally miscellaneous. If I want to burn through these quickly, or at least knock off a large chunk of them, the best option would be to hit the comics and just bang them out one after another. Though typically I try to interact with something for at least an hour to get a good feel for it, then write for about an hour, and then edit the video. I don't think that's going to be possible for a comic book, maybe for a regular book or a tabletop rules set or something like that. Unless there's a major manga length story in this bundle, I don't think I'll be reading these comics for over an hour. I'm going to run down 5 of them here and tell you what I thought about them, and if you should give them a read as well. Also, in an effort to not give away the whole story in this video, my visual elements might be limited. Some of these stories in this video are only a few pages long, so I may be held back to only using 1 or so pages. This is Mummified Games Book Club number 1. I'm Tony, and let's go down the list of all the comics and other stories offered in the itch.io Racial Justice Bundle. First on the list, Avery Chase Episode 1 Apparition. I pulled this one first because honestly I just like the cover. It was super interesting and colorful in comparison to the other options I'm going to be talking about here. Not to mention that the cover had a person in a spacesuit, and I was sort of in a sci-fi mood at the time. The comic follows Avery Chase. He's an explorer who goes to random places and does things. His job isn't really talked about that much, and it's honestly not that important for the story, more of just the vehicle to get him to the inciting event. The bulk of this first issue is about how he comes across this mirror thing that shows him an exact copy of himself. And they have an interaction, in my opinion, is probably going to be how a lot of us would act being face to face with somebody who is an exact clone and moves in direct parallels with us. Eventually, they figure out how to move past themselves. There isn't much after that before we need to move on to Volume 2. There's only 26 pages in Volume 1, and that just feels short. I don't have much experience with paywall digital comics, but I do want to see what happens next. I'm interested, I'm hooked. I want to know how he gets along in this mirror world he finds himself in. I don't think 1 volume is worth $6, but there's episode 1 and 2 available for $10. And at that point, it might be a better deal, but I couldn't tell you since I haven't read the second volume. But it's good, and if you don't think it's a crazy price, then sure, go for it. So later, after rereading this review and the comic, I probably actually would wait for an annual type release, something where the whole story or a good chunk of it was available. Maybe something in parallel to the value you get out of the $10 2-volume deal. I'm the kind of person who wants to wait till there's a lot of the story before I start diving in. And considering I don't know if the story ends in Volume 2 or what happens there, I don't necessarily know how much I want to invest into it or not. Number 2. Apple Quest Monsters DX, a collection of 80 plus monsters from an RPG that doesn't exist. Alright, that's weird. This book is interesting. The creator describes it as almost like a player's guide for a game. You know, like those old Brady games or other strategy guides for video games you'd find at like Target. He says his favorite thing to do was to look at all the game books and look at all the monsters that he would interact with in a game. So he made a monster guide for a game that isn't out there. It's sort of a creative way to put the cart before the horse. The art in this is super cute and pixel-esque. The monsters you read about all feel like they could be in a game like Dragon Quest, Mother, or Earthbound. They all have quirky style and are fun to look at, but that's it. The charm of a book this big without substance of an actual game behind it kinda falls flat. I read up to about 20 monsters in, and I'm like, okay, let's just jump to the end and see the real big baddies. And it definitely lives up with how how your JRPG flows. There are some imposing monsters at the end of this book, and like I said, that's well done, but if there's nothing to do with this information, then it just kind of feels like nothing. Maybe I'm just being too practical. You just have to take it at face value and run with it. Look at it as an actual art book. If you have the £2 to spare for this, then I think it's a good price. I highly recommend this book to others. Maybe if you're a DM or something and you're looking for monsters that you would probably want to force into a tabletop game, then sure, this might be inspiration for weird other monsters that you may not have already thought about or don't come standard in your typical monsters guide somewhere. Number 3. Combed Clap of Thunder. Content warning for this collection of stories. We're going to be talking about blood, death, suicide, dark themes, and a sense of shrinking worth in the world. Jump ahead to the timestamp on screen if you want to skip this section. Oh boy. Okay, so this one was hard to get through. There are a lot of stories I like that are dark and hard to get through. They're a bit of a slog, just from their dark content and brutal place they originate from. These 3 stories are just like that, but even though they share the same dark place and dooming feeling as some other stories I've read in the past, these just don't hit the same spot. I think it's from a lack of hope and light at the end of the tunnel, and instead these stories are more like just falling down a pit. The Lonely Auto-Cannibal, the Scientist. This story follows a scientist sometime after a great disruption. Okay, no, hold on. This story follows a scientist sometime after a great destruction in a post-apocalyptic world. The whole story speaks through the eyes of the main character, who talks briefly about the world and how there are different new types of people and what this world is like now that everything has gone belly up. The art is really ugly, and that's actually a good thing. I feel the artist means to add to the world with this ugly art style. Like, you wouldn't want a story about death and thoughts of cannibalism and suicide to be a pretty story. No, this story has tons of impossible to make out things. Not a single panel in this story is designed to look like any one thing. There are things that are directly mentioned, and at that point you can say, okay, I sort of understand what that is now. Like naming the object in the panel as a candle. Okay, that's a candle. It sort of looks like one, so I can go with it. But there are so many other things in the panels that we're left to wonder, what the heck it is. Why is she so deformed in this armor? What's on her face? Are her eyes misaligned? There's a point where the character makes a comment about how they're finding new ways of smashing mirrors. So does that mean that they don't want to look at themselves? Are they not happy with what they look like? Are they themselves so removed from this world that they're talking about these new types of people, but they themselves don't see themselves as that person? Are they ignoring the fact that they're changing? Who knows? The character is at times disgusting. There's a moment where early on where they capture a raw fish and they eat it raw, and the panels just show black and then white teeth and black liquid being mushed between them. Very visceral, to say the least. This is a dirty read. Bodhisattva, I think that's how it works. Okay. Again, the dark contrast in the black and white images with the rough drawing makes this a hard read. This is the story of a girl talking about how her sister jumped in front of a train. And honestly, I feel like that's all I need to say about it. This whole comic talks about how, for most of this girl's life, she would ask people if they wanted to end it with her, and how she didn't feel like it was that big of a deal since people die all the time. Truth be told, this is where I sort of tapped out. And after reading that last story, it sort of put me off the rest of this book. So I put it down, I did some other things, I reviewed other things, and then I came back to finish this. The Real Jesuses. So just like in the stories before, it follows one character's description of how life went belly up. This happened when it was found out that the god everybody worshipped on Earth was nothing more than a pet to a higher set of gods. Okay, we're going here now. All right. Again, it's not my bag, and honestly, it once again sort of bummed me out, something awful. A bunch of religions started to pop up, trying to please these other new gods, and also follows how the main character joined one of these new religions. It's all just a bunch of feeling of uselessness and giving up on one's own self and letting someone else take over your life. All these stories have dark and melancholy feels to them, and if that is your particular interest, if you like stories like that, then sure, go for it. I feel like it really captures those feelings very well. But seeing as though I'm not 100% experienced with these things, I don't have a history of being able to enjoy or work my way through stories of such melancholy and sadness to them. It's not something that I personally would recommend for myself. But if it's for you, then sure, I'm sure somebody else might find enjoyment out of this. All these stories in this collection remind me of this webcomic where these goblins are making stories that look like blimps that float high in the sky and people hold on to them and ride them around. And then there's this other goblin who makes stories that don't soar in the sky but fall down into a canyon. And he gets mocked because his stories don't elevate anyone, but in reality, they are elevating people, just people in a different place. Go check it out. It's Akimbo Comics 233. Give it a read. It's free. You can just Google it. Okay, so back to something that has a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel. Number 4, The Rise and Fall of Cataclysmo. Short does not mean bad. This comic is the environmentalist version of Baby Shoes for Sale, Never Worn. Or, sort of. The story starts out like the origin story of a mad scientist who's going to use their power to fight the injustices of a major corporation. That this corporation actually ends up being the reason for most of the climate change. The main character goes home and thinks up a plan about how to get back at them. Builds a weather-controlling helmet and gloves, and at 7 pages in, including the cover, that's as far as I can get without going into spoiling the ending. It's $1 on itch. It's a good short story, and it's got a great point. If climate change is a big deal to you, it should, and you want to learn more about that, Up Is Not Jump, yes, I know, I'm referencing them again, made a great video about climate change and how it's not just a natural cycle of the earth, and explains why that is. And it's in regular English, so that way anyone can understand it. It's a good watch. Buy this comic and then go watch that video. And then finally, number 5, Fall Diary. A daily 2-square panel following this woman's life through her last semester of college in the fall of 2018. I can't really get behind stuff like this because I always assume there is going to be something bigger or something that has meaning at the end of it all, when in reality, this is just random scribbles from an art major. Okay, well, I'm not mocking her major or her art style. She has her major, so she's already one step ahead of me, but it's tiring, It's like having that one friend that all they do is talk about how bad their life is and that they can barely function. Me as an individual, I always want to have the solution to a problem. I can't be the solution to this problem. So it's left me feeling helpless and like I have nothing I can do. It's not a fun experience, this comic, but maybe I'm just being too hard on it. It shows dedication to draw 2 things every day, and the consistency is there. I can applaud that. As you are all well aware, I'm trying to maintain a consistent schedule with these videos, but I've had failings before. But I'm not here to say woe is me. I'm just ignoring the problem and moving forward. Okay, so that's 5 stories down and a bunch more to go. Let me know what your thoughts on these stories were. Did you enjoy the otherworldly style in the darker stories? Are there stories that you found on itch that you think I should check out? Leave your thoughts in the comments. In the meantime, I'm gonna go think about what makes a good 3-act story and keep working on reading more of these stories. Do the YouTube dance and keep digging out from under your pile of games, and we'll make it out sometime. See you in the next one.